But without any reason that I know of, they changed from numbers to letters. They turned to it. And it said in a survey that of the Houstonites, sometimes or often they get lost in their own city. About 54% of the people who live there get lost sometime or another. Wow. I thought I had difficulties. Well, they said about navigation nuttiness. Here are the 5 top cities it's easiest to get lost in. Only one of those fit my category, where I've been lost in one of them. The others I haven't been there. But it said Houston, Texas. Have you been to Washington, D.C.? Oh, I have been to Washington, D.C. I take that back. The District of Columbia. Have you been there? They say that's the second easiest city to get lost in. Jane and I were so glad, and our youngest son, Doug, were so glad that they had a bus service. And you could pay a ticket, and you get on that bus, and they'd go to different highlight parts. I think we even ended up in Mount Vernon. And you could get off, and every 20 minutes one of those buses would come by. So if you want to stay someplace an hour, jump on the bus when it comes by and go to another spot. Well, that was the way to go. Then Los Angeles, California. How many have been to Los Angeles? I take it back. I forgot. Boy, this is bad, but I have been there once. Los Angeles. Then Atlanta, Georgia, and then Boston, Massachusetts. Now they say Cleveland is the easiest city to exit to go to a holiday weekend. Wherever you're going, it's easiest to get out of Cleveland and go. Somebody who lives there probably say, yeah, we want to get out of Cleveland and maybe stay out. But what's the best place to call home? Where would you call the best place in these 50 states? Well, I haven't been to a number of them, but they say New Hampshire is the place. Low unemployment, higher income, education, good weather. Well, God offers us an address that is easy to find. Secondly, on your outline, we all want to feel safe. That's just part of our makeup, that we want to feel safe in life. We do. Safe. Well, in our homes. I mean, we have locks. And then sometimes they say, have deadbolts. And sometimes put some bars up at your window. Depends on the neighborhood you live in. Or alarm systems. About 4 blocks from us, this really shook up the people in our area, because about 4 blocks from us, a school teacher was 58 and she was murdered. Wow. Because the lady next to one of our neighbors, she's a divorcee, I think, with two daughters are grown, and she's a school teacher, and she said, she just couldn't believe it happened. She said, this is not common to our neighborhood, not at all. So we've had a number of discussions with her, but about safety. And maybe 6-8 months later, they did charge a man who had been on parole, but he broke his parole and was sent back to prison, and they charged him when he was in prison with her murder because he used to be a neighbor of hers. We didn't know her, but we understand every day she'd walk her dog back and forth past our house and back again to her house about 4 blocks away. But we think in our homes we have locks and deadbolts, and we have security systems, alarm systems, and a lot of alarm system notification. There are signs they like to put in the yard by the house if you have an alarm system, and a lot of those began to appear in different places that hadn't appeared before in our neighborhood. But not only in our homes we like to be safe, but in our vehicles and in our relationships. And in verse number 11, you notice that in Psalm 91 verse 11, look at this. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. Now I want to tell you, and you probably know it very well yourself depending where you were and which country, but 9/11/01 really shook us up. Oh yeah. 9/11/01. Rightly so. Now, Charles Spurgeon, a fine Christian from years past, concerning Psalm 91:1, you see, he who dwells in the shelter of the Most High, or shall abide. He used the phrase, he or she shall pass the night. They shall pass the night. It denotes a constant and continuous dwelling of the just in the assistance and protection by God. He shall pass the night. Now, that help and protection of God is not like a vineyard that just gets destroyed overnight. It's not like a tent that person walks away from it and leaves the tent. No. It's a strong tower. It's a paternal home. It's where we spend our life with the best and the wealthiest and the mighty of parents. It's passing the night. It denotes security and rest. Well, listen to this from Genesis chapter 15, verse 1. Listen to these words. God is speaking to Abraham, and he says this, "Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward." I'm your shield. That's what he says to us as children of God. When we have Christ as our Savior and Lord and we know sins forgiven by faith, He is our shield. He's our very great reward. Well, consider this scenario. When we're talking about we all want to feel safe. Well, it's about way out in the state of Nebraska. I think I've only been there twice on the way to Colorado to a youth convention, Jane and myself, and we're on our way back. Nebraska. Ever been in Nebraska? Okay, anyway, Beatrice, Nebraska, on the way to Colorado, and there was a West Side Baptist church. Now listen just to what happened. It said this. The good members, the choir members, there were 18 in their choir, 18 members. If you've been in a choir, you can identify with them. And so Wednesday night, every Wednesday night at 7:30, they would come someplace in the sanctuary and in this area, and they would practice. But that particular Wednesday evening, one by one, two by two, people began to show up, but they were all late. It had never happened before. When you have 18 choir members and they were all late, for instance, the church pianist overslept after her after-dinner nap, and she would bring her mother, and so they were both late. Well, a girl, a high school sophomore, she was having trouble with one of her lessons or her studies, one of her subjects, and she had to spend more time on it, and she came late. And that one couple couldn't get their car started, so they couldn't get there on time, but they had to pick up people, and so the people they picked up were late also. Even the pastor and his wife were late. I mean, good grief. 18 of them. Well, this had never happened before, but here's the rest of the story. That night, they weren't starting to practice the choir at 7:30. That night, there was a gas leak in the basement of the West Side Baptist Church. At precisely the same time that the choir would be rehearsing, the gas leak was ignited by the church furnace, and the whole church blew up. And the furnace room was right below the area where the choir rehearsed. We all want to feel safe. But you see on your outline, number 3, we don't like being at risk in the United States. We don't like being at risk in the United States. We don't like being at risk in the USA. We want to play it safe. We mentioned 9/11/01. When Iran's president visited Latin America, Venezuela, Chavez, the leader, we really wondered. As you sit here today, all of us wonder about North Korea. Oh yes. And China, and Afghanistan, and Iraq. And the constant fear, if you've ever read about families in the country of Israel, the little country of Israel, and how in fact the gas masks, they have gas masks in their rooms and sealed windows, and they'd seal up the windows in their apartment, and the children going to school face that kind of thing, and the bombings and the war and the hatred, day and night. Life is a risk for whoever it is. Go back and look at this one sometime, but listen now at Luke chapter 9, verse 62. Luke 9, verse 62. Listen to these words of Jesus. Luke 9, 62. Jesus replied, "No one who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is fit for service in the kingdom